On this episode of Locked On Angels, are we stuck with Arte Moreno? We being Angel fans, we being the Angel organization, because it feels kind of like we're stuck, and I'm not so happy to be stuck with you. Arte Moreno talked to the media on Monday, and we've got all the details on what he said regarding the team, payroll, and the stadium. And are we stuck? It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're getting ready for spring training games this weekend. Can't wait to see that. I think we saw Jack Ohanowitz is going to get the first start against the Mariners on Saturday, Mike. It looks like everybody, my favorite team, it looks like everybody that we want to see get a start is going to take their turn through the rotation. So that's exciting. Mike and I have been fans of this team for our entire lives, and it's a pleasure to be the host of Locked On Angels, lifelong fans of this team. Talking Angels baseball with you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday. We're so excited that you're here. On today's show, Arte Moreno spoke to the media on Monday. We're going to start with what he had to say about the team, the payroll, and lost revenue. Michael, why don't you get into the details?
Yeah, Rhett Bollinger wrote that Arte is first pleased with the direction Perry Minasian and Ron Washington are taking the team. Arte said that Perry has done a good job. Wash is really focused. I like the coaches. Just sit and watch these young guys throw bullpen sessions and where they came from and the programs they came through. And we have a second baseman, Christian Moore, who just won a championship in college. You have to continue to put good building blocks together. And then the reality is being able to supplement everything. So, Johnny, those comments make it sound like Arte is actually pleased with Perry Minasian and what he's done in building this roster from the ground up. What do you think?
Yeah, it finally feels like he's staying out of the way of his baseball people and letting them make baseball decisions. I know that there's a lot of criticism for how Perry has drafted, especially with the fact that they're drafting ready now guys in the first round. I totally understand the criticism behind that. In an ideal world, they would be drafting guys, typically out of high school that are top prospects that you can let bake for a couple of years in the minor leagues and then bring them up. But the fact is that with Arte Moreno, I'll take what I can get, Mike. Yeah. That's kind of the pathetic state of Angel fandom right now. And that is, with Arte Moreno, you take what you can get. And when you operate in Arte's world, you have to operate within a budget.
Yeah.
You have to operate with him making all the final decisions on free agency and whatnot. So Perry has been able to take care of the areas that I think Arte Moreno stays out of, which is scouting and minor leagues and drafting and development and that sort of thing. Now, do they need money, in particular Arte's money, to scout and draft and player develop? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, they absolutely do. However, I think that Perry has been operating within this Arte snow globe as well as he can. And I think he trusts Minasian. That's why he gave him an extension. I think he trusts Ron Washington. He's the most Socia-like manager since Mike Socia that they've had. And I know Joe Madden was here, but I think Ron Washington is a little bit more Socia-like in terms of the respect and the aura that he carries as a manager. And I think that that's something we haven't seen since Socia. So I think that Moreno really trusts the two of them. I think that's a good thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, you mentioned how the money obviously is in question, and it has to come from Arte. He did speak on that. He said he wanted to do more in free agency, like adding a middle of the order bat, but spending the money held him back. He said the one thing that really we were targeting, we didn't get accomplished was the middle of the order bat. the economics and the years, we were just unwilling to pay 5 or 6 years worth of money to a designated hitter because a couple of guys that we wanted are not fielders. But we decided to go early with Soler at DH just to make sure we had someone there. And then he also added, we were also looking at starters and we were looking at bats, but starters are multiple years for $30 million. So the question is, do we have enough depth to go to pay $200 million for a player? And Anthony Rendon has 2 years left on his deal, and he's obviously not going to play this year. So those were just some interesting comments. And Jeff Fletcher then wrote in his article that Artie said of the payroll that he wasn't interested in spending $200 million. We needed too many things to spend $200 million. So he has, in talking about that, he's talking about like a player, not about the roster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Payroll is estimated right now for the Angels at $202 million. And so Artie was talking about an individual player making that much money. Moreno also said the Angels are going to lose money because payroll went up, television revenue went down, sponsorship and ticket sales are down, and the Halos pay $25 million in revenue sharing for being a large market team. He said, we're probably going to lose money, and we're probably going to lose $50 million to $60 million minimum. John, what does that say to you, Artie, opening the books and sharing the details with us?
Yeah, this just confirms what we have long speculated and stuff that you and I have said over the last year, that Artie is just going to adjust the payroll based on attendance, sponsorships, et cetera, et cetera. And this is why when people say, like, I'm not spending another dollar on this team, that is your prerogative. That's your, your flag to carry, your battle to wage, right? That's totally fine with us. If that's how you want to fan, that's totally fine with us. But we here at Locked On Angels are not going to tell anybody how to fan, right, quote unquote. And the reason why we say that is because if people choose not to spend money on this team or attend games, or, make a big deal out of, and I'm not saying everybody does this, but some people like to make a big deal. I haven't attended a game since 2016. You know what I mean? Yeah. Artie's just going to adjust the payroll. Right. So whatever money he doesn't get from attendance, it adjusts the payroll. Now, to be fair, it did go up from $176 million last year to $202 million this year. And it's interesting to me, Mike, that it used to be about avoiding the luxury tax. They would spend up to a certain point. They just wouldn't cross that first threshold to where they get dinged in the luxury tax threshold. Now, all of a sudden, it's about keeping a lower payroll based on the revenue that they bring in, which I can understand from a business standpoint. But what I'm saying is, and something we've long said, is that as long as he feels it in his pocket, they're going to make up the money somehow. And that means that they're going to make it up with a lack of payroll. In this case, seems like they're okay with eating 50 or 60 million, whatever numbers he threw out there. But it's just interesting to me that, with losing 50 or 60 million, now the TV revenue, that's a legit issue. Diamond Sports Group, who owns Bally's, now FanDuel Sports Network is Bally's. So if you're confused and you're looking for the Angel game on Saturday, it's on FanDuel Sports Network West, everyone. And they had to renegotiate basically a new payment to the team, which was actually lower than what they had originally agreed upon. 2011? Was that when they made that huge deal?
So, yeah.
But with sponsorships and ticket sales, I wonder what could have been done to solve that, Mike, with sponsorships and ticket sales. Can you think of anything at all that would have helped with sponsorships?
Would have been great if there was like a player that would draw attention from the media and would draw attention from around the world and would be like the best player in the world that you could have on your team. It would have been great to have somebody like that on your team, right?
Now that you mention it, you got me thinking about, Shohei Otani. And here's why I take issue with the entire Shohei Otani debacle. Arte Moreno and company didn't trade him in 2023 because they wanted to keep him for 2 months of 2023 to maintain sponsorships and ticket sales. But you didn't spend the money to bring him back. You tried to put a winning team around him at the deadline. It didn't work. And then when he came to you to say, hey, here's the offer, You went, no thanks. And I have said this many, many times. They have left billions on the table by not re-signing Shohei Otani. They had no plan for beyond 2023 for Otani and what kind of deals they could have gotten, what kind of players they could have brought in. Mike, the Dodgers brought in 3 players based on the fact that Shohei Otani is part of that team.
Right.
And that, that's just by him being there, by virtue of Otani being there. And then you have the entire nation of Japan behind you. You would have millions of Angel fans from Japan if Otani was still with his team. Now you can make the argument, maybe it wasn't the best thing for the team playing wise. You can go down that route. But the fact is that it didn't seem like you ever made a consideration to bring him back. You immediately priced yourself out by saying, I don't know if we're going to be able to keep him.
Yeah.
And then you can't think past the final 2 months of the season. Like that's the definition of give me everything I'm owed now. And I'll, it's kind of like when you do the lottery and you take it in one lump sum, you're missing out on the collective payments that you could be getting for the next 20 years or whatever it is. And I feel like they are so short-sighted, aren't they? Hasn't that always been the problem with this front office?
Yeah, John, I mean, I looked at the stats for the Angels from Forbes the last few years. John, they've made money. They've made money every single season. And that's the issue, is their strategy is to make more money than they spend. That's their strategy. There isn't a strategy for the game. There isn't a strategy for ticket sales. There isn't a strategy for advertising dollars. The strategy is we need to make more money than we lose. It's a year by year process. And John, if somebody could solve that, fix that, if there was somebody that was, I don't know, like the owner of the team that could begin to implement a right strategy and get maybe the right people around him to solve that issue, wouldn't that be great? That's the problem with Arte, is he must be an Enneagram 6. An Enneagram 6 always starts with what the problem is and what the negativity is and what the worst case scenario might be. And he's like, $50 to $60 million. We're going to lose that this year. Yeah, you know what? You made that in the combination of the last 5 years. You made money in those really sucky, terrible seasons where you made it seem like you were going for all of the gold and you were going for the playoffs. And now here you are wanting to play your violin and wanting us to feel sad for you that you're going to lose 50 to 60. That's why you didn't get any other players. Hey, if you got a couple other players outside of what you already did, perhaps people would show up more. Perhaps advertising dollars would be drawn to Angel Stadium. When that place is full, fans are going to show up and they're going to bring a whole lot of energy. And they've shown up even when this team is crappy and sucky. And so if the team is good, all of us Angel fans and all of those kind of marginal Angel fans, they're going to show up. They're going to be there. They're going to pay for whatever you have at the stadium. And they're going to deal with how the stadium might be run down and crappy a little bit and how it might be irritating to be there, whatever might be the case. But if you have a good product, people are going to show up. And I get that he's not the Dodgers, but the Dodgers have set a really great precedent for how you invest in your team. And they're making money hand over fist because they've invested in a product called Shohei Otani and all of the players to make sure that this team is going to be successful. And people just can't stay away from that stadium. And so you have to, as the owner, go, I'm in Orange County. How do I own this place? How do I figure out how to dominate this place? Maybe I should drive down Catella Boulevard all the way to the Honda Center and talk to the owners of the Ducks on how they're doing that, because they seem to be doing just fine, John. And so that's this whole thing is just, it's silly. It's like, you want us to feel sorry for you,
right?
You're the problem, homie. And this is why they're in the bad situation that they're in, because you've set up a terrible precedent the last 10 years and you haven't thought about the future. You've just thought about this year, and then you thought about next year, and then you think about the next year, and your only priority is the money that you make. It's more than the money that you're spending out. And that's not a successful business model in any way, shape, or form. So as the owner, you should figure this out. Stop blaming everybody else. Nobody should be fired if this team doesn't make the playoffs at the end of the year. The person that should be fired is Arte Moreno. He should grab himself by the collar and by the belt buckle and toss himself out the door.
Give him the DJ Jazzy Jeff, right? Throw him out the door. Now, that's the thing. This team operates day to day, not in the long term. In the past, it's always been, ooh, who's the hot free agent bat we can get?
Right.
And it's not. In the past, it's been, oh, we can't spend money on pitching. They don't play every day. That's not a marquee name. And that's why you end up with Josh Hamilton over Zach Greinke, who went on to have huge success the year after the Angels had him. And it's been a lack of investment in the farm system. That's why there's never been a rebuild in the true sense of the word. And it's why they won't spend on a free agent $200 million for a couple of years or $30 million a year. So that's why this has always been the problem. It's never forward thinking. And so here we are at, oh, gee, we're going to lose 50 to 60 million this year. That's your own fault, dude. That's your own fault for not doing any long-term investments. And that's why the organization is in the state that it's in, despite guys like Perry Minasian, Ron Washington, et cetera, doing the best they can in spite of the lack of investment in the future. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, are we stuck with Arte Moreno? Because it sounds like we're stuck with Arte Moreno. We're going to tell you what we mean in just a minute.
Looking for a snack while you watch or listen to the show while you're at work and you're watching and listening to the show? We've got a snack that's delicious and nutritious. It's a good source of protein. It's Wonderful Pistachios, John. I love Wonderful Pistachios. It's one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Man, you can get your baseball knowledge from us, and you can get 10% of your daily value of protein from Wonderful Pistachios. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling stronger longer and being fueled longer. Maybe pick up some no shells variety. Those are my favorite. Pop them in your hand, throw them in your mouth. Love that. While you're at work, on a road trip, or you just need a quick protein boost, they're perfect. But if you love cracking open the shells like John does, then get yourself the in-shell option. They're the classic favorite. Get snackin and get crackin with the snack that packs the protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We're continuing our conversation, breaking down and discussing what Arte Moreno had to say to the likes of Jeff Fletcher of the OC Register and Rhett Bollinger of MLB.com, who covers the Angels beat. One of the biggest takeaways from Arte meeting with the media was on his decision to put the team up for sale and then take it off the market. Previously, he had said that he was showing potential buyers around the stadium and he couldn't let the team go or his love of baseball go. It was just too hard to let all that go. But what he had to say the other day was a very different story, Mike. In fact, Jeff Fletcher reported in his article that after the stadium deal fell apart due to the corruption scandal with Mayor Harry Sidhu, reports of Arte being investigated by the FBI, they took a toll on his family. And so they asked him if he would sell the team. And so this is a quote from Moreno. He said, "I ended up answering more questions about that deal, the scandal, than the baseball stuff," Moreno said. "It just wore my family to the point where they asked if I would sell the team." Now, the timeline of all of this does add up. The city canceled the sale in May of 2022. Arte put the team on the market in August of 2022. Then in January of 2023, he took the team off the market once things cooled down, and it was determined he wasn't part of the scandal, like he wasn't being investigated by the FBI anymore. And then shortly after, in August of 2023, that's when Sidhu had pled guilty. So the timeline there does add up. But what makes me laugh is the fact that there was an interesting contrast to what Arte said originally when he put the team took the team off the market versus what he said on Monday. And that is the idea that, Arte wanted to sell while he was under investigation. And he confirmed that on Monday. But the original article that came out, it was a I mean, I'm just going to say what it was, a Tom Verducci puff piece in Sports Illustrated. And this is the title, Mike. Why Arte Moreno couldn't give up the dream just yet. And you know what? The most of the stuff that was in there was Arte Moreno walking around saying, smell the hot dogs. Oh, how about a cold beer? And listen to the crack of the bat. That had nothing to do with the fact that he put the team on the market. It's a very different story, one that felt kind of obvious. And it made me laugh because when he put the team or took the team off the market and did that interview, it was like, I just couldn't let it go. It meant too much to me. Now we know it was, you were just scared of being investigated by the FBI and your family asked you to put it up. So just a lot of nonsense there. But then Mike Rhett actually had something about the stadium as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he interviewed Arte, and Arte had to say this. He said, I put money into the stadium every year. We try to keep it clean, and it needs money, but I put in $5 to $7 million a year, but I'm not going to put in $200 to $300 million in the stadium that the city owns without their participation. Maybe we'll get a new mayor and council that want us to stay. Jeff Fletcher added to that. He said Moreno contrasted the situation in Anaheim with the one in Tempe, where the Angels and the local government split the $20 million price tag for upgrades to the player development facilities. John, again, it's all about money. And I understand, like, if you don't own this stadium, then yes, I think the ones that own the stadium should at least pony up for some resource.
That part I can get on board with. Like, $5 to $7 million, that makes sense for, regular maintenance of a huge stadium like Angel Stadium. And I can understand the trepidation there of not making a huge investment when you don't even own the property. It belongs to the city. So that I could understand. I agree, which I hate saying out loud.
Question mark. Yeah.
The fact is like, I get that part. I get that part.
Mm-hmm.
But then, Mike, to immediately turn it into, maybe we'll get a new mayor. Maybe we'll get a new city council who will actually want us to be here. Like, Ashley Aiken has said nothing but good things about wanting to work with the Angels. She's the new mayor that took over after Sadu. She said nothing but good things about, like, we would love to work out a deal with the Angels long term. And, previously Arte has said, like, it just doesn't feel like the right time yet. And now it just feels like there's a bitterness. And then to contrast that with, what's happening in Tempe and how they were able to work with the city to do the renovations to the facilities that they did, which look awesome, by the way, but that's a $20 million price tag that they split. That's a lot different than a price tag that it would cost to renovate Angel Stadium, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot that needs to be done at that stadium. They've done a lot to make it to where it is today, which I think Angel fans, I would say that our Angel fans are grateful, but it always boils down to resource for this guy. And I get it. He's the owner and he's watching the bottom line. And that's part of why you're the owner. But there's all these conversations about how he's such a great business owner. But these, just in this segment and the last segment, the things that we talked about, John, he doesn't sound like a great business owner. It sounds like he's a turtle on his back when it comes to resource, or he's doing quite well, but he doesn't want anybody to know that he's doing quite well. And that, my friends, is what I think is actually happening here. I think that he's doing quite well, and he's trying to give a good narrative for why things aren't where maybe fans would want them to be. Why didn't you sign this guy? And why didn't you go get that guy? And he's like, well, we're going to lose 50 to 60 million. And well, we have to invest into the stadium, and it's not my stadium. And I need the city to help invest in the stadium. All of that sounds reasonable, but the reality is I think he's doing quite well, and he's trying to make it seem like he's got a lot of roadblocks in front of him. But listen, if you're a good businessman, you hurdle the roadblocks. You figure it out. What's the next step for you? How do you surround yourself with people that can take the next step for this organization? It just feels like a lot of like, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know how I got here and bought this team. And oh, I don't know how I arrived here to run this team, right? The reality is if you want your money, you sell the team, which has been noted as a team that could be sold for $2.7 billion, and you bought it for $180 million. All the money that you're thinking that you're losing, you're saying that you're losing, you could be pocketed for the rest of your life and your family's life if you just sold this team and moved on. And I know in the next segment, we're going to talk about the potential of maybe a new owner and him mentioning that. Like, Arte, don't do this to me. Don't be bitter and hang on to this team because somebody might come in and be better than you, right?
Yeah.
You're not a good businessman based upon just this article that I'm reading and the conversations that you're having.
Well, and the idea that he went back on selling the team because he's, free and clear from any investigation, it just goes to show that we're stuck with him, aren't we? Like, we're stuck with him until I'm just saying, like,
I know
we're stuck with him until he can't run this team anymore.
Yeah.
And whether that, he gets old, I don't wish anything bad on anybody, but like, until there comes a point where he can no longer run this team, that's what it feels like. And it seemed like there was hope when there was turmoil. And you'd think with all the turmoil the Angels have had to go through, not even mentioning the scandal with the city of Anaheim, you'd think that would be incentive, but it just seems like we're stuck with Artie until he's done with this team.
Everydayers, you need SelectQuote on your team, especially when it comes to protecting your legacy and your family's financial future. They are one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience. They've helped over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies. It's going to cost you more. It's going to cover you less. You don't want that. SelectQuote is going to help you out. They're licensed insurance agents. They work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. And if you're in good health, they're going to work with their carriers to get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million with no medical examination required. And all of these policies are really affordable, more affordable than you think. You can get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. So get that right now. Get started right now at selectquote.com/lockedon. A licensed insurance agent is going to call you right away. So answer the phone, and they're going to give you the right policy for your life and for your budget. Again, selectquote.com/lockedon to get started. SelectQuote, they shop, you save.
Mike, some sort of self-reflection took place during Artie's meeting with the media, including his thoughts on the team's failures over the last decade. In Rhett's article for MLB.com, he wrote that Arte Moreno believes it's on him as the owner to build a winning franchise and said the blame can be cast on him for the team's recent struggles.
Full stop. Full stop.
Okay. Full stop.
Okay, now continue.
Okay.
Right? Like that's what you should. Full stop.
Drink it in.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that self-awareness, Artie. But then unfortunately he kept talking. So go ahead.
He said, at the end of the day, it's probably me. I can spend the money on Mike Trout, but I can't go up there and bat for him. I can spend the money on a pitcher. I can't tell you how healthy he's going to be. You have to have the right players. You've got to get healthy players, and they've got to play together. There's 30 teams trying to accomplish the same thing. Jeff Fletcher's article added a comment from Moreno that seemed to imply that new ownership would not solve the issue. Here's what Artie had to say. At the end of the day, is somebody going to come in here and spend $100 million more? Yes. Is that going to make a difference right now?
Yes.
They have to pick the right players,
yes,
and they've got to be healthy,
right,
and they've got to play together.
Exactly.
Now, there's truth to the idea that he can't play for the players. He can only spend the money, and guys have to be healthy, and that's a big reason why things haven't worked. But can we talk about how he's missing the mark?
Yeah,
please. And this goes back to what you said earlier. The way Artie sees it is, what's a new owner going to do? Spend $100 million more on players? Yeah, probably. Yeah, he's probably going to do that. $100 million on a frontline starter makes a huge difference, you bozo. So a new owner who's passionate about this team is also going to come in and invest in scouting.
Yeah.
Invest in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Invest in player development.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you said, Mike. It's always about the money. It's short-sighted, day-to-day nonsense. With this ownership group, it's no long-term goals. It's year-over-year results. And then, if that doesn't work, we'll just reset and adjust our budget and we'll try again next year. It's the definition of insanity. And that has been what the Angels have been over the last 10 years. And it cracks me up that he says that his solution is, what's somebody else going to do? Spend $100 million on somebody? Yeah, but also they will do this, and this, that. What are you doing? Give me a break.
You know what? Let's find out. Artie, let's find out what somebody else might do. How about that?
How about you sell the team, Artie, so we can find out?
I mean, if we could find out, let's find out if you're right. Right? You walk away with your $2.7 billion and we get a new owner. Let's find out if it's right. And if you're right, we will acknowledge that Artie was right. Artie was totally right. But the way that we find out, Artie, is if you get rid of ownership and you sell this team. And that's the reality, is that it's almost like he's hanging on to this out of spite. Right? Like he's saying, I'm going to be spiteful and I'm just going to hang on to this team, and we're going to lose all this money and we're going to do this. And what is a new owner going to do? I would love to find out, Artie. I would.
Yeah. What? That guy's what's a new owner going to do? Spend more money?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, Artie, that they are going to do to help this team win, because one player can make all the difference. If you had invested in a frontline starter instead of Anthony Rendon, where do you think you'd be right now? Probably not wasting $76 million over the next 2 years on Anthony Rendon. But Mike, here's the bottom line, and I'll end with this.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having such a lack of self-awareness. It's exhausting. Like, I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but any given situation, I'm an anxious person. I take medication, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm an anxious person. So I am very hyper self-aware of like, oh, am I doing this? Am I bugging this person? Maybe I should look inward and see if I'm the issue here, or maybe I'll talk to this person. I can't imagine having such a lack of self-awareness, because all you have to do is look in the mirror and examine what worked when you were winning. You had Bill Stoneman as a fantastic GM. You had great scouting, development. You had a great department in terms of scouting. You got Mike Trout when tons of other teams skipped over him. You developed players that you drafted and signees that you got internationally. And then from building from within, you supplemented those pieces with some of the best free agents on the market, like Vlad Sr. and Bartolo Colon and things like that. It's just like, what stops you from looking at the years 2003 through 2009 and going, gee, what were we doing back then that worked so well? How did we get to the playoffs so many times? What stops you from doing that? I can't imagine having that much lack of self-awareness. And it boggles my mind. I don't know if it's old age. I don't know if it's being a billionaire. I don't know what it is, but and maybe you and I are just lowly on the totem pole to where we have time in the day to go, you know what? Maybe that was my fault. Maybe I should apologize. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's exhausting. And I can't see how these guys can't see past the end of their nose when it comes to having foresight and forethought on how to make this team successful.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. Takes a look at the entire league, has some good humor that he shares with you, and some great baseball knowledge. You can find his show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, friends, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram, whether you're watching or listening. Come on over to YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, help us get to 10K by opening day, and get in the comment section, because that's the best way to get in touch with us. Mike, what do we have on deck for Thursday's show?
John, let's highlight a couple of players. Let's talk about Kenley Jansen, and let's talk about Logan O'Hoppe, and maybe throw in one other player in that, and we'll decide who that is tomorrow. But I really want to talk about Kenley Jansen first, because I like him on this team and what he brings. And he was interviewed. He showed up this week. He was interviewed. What he had to say was really great. And then Logan O'Hoppe actually talked about what happened at the end of last year, and that, John, he wasn't tired. So we're going to talk about Kenley and Logan, and we'll flip a coin. We'll see what that third player is tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. We hope you'll come back and join us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Thursday.
Let's find out. Let's find out if you're right, Artie. Let's find out if a new owner comes in.
Go ahead and sell the team, Artie.
Sell the team, see what happens.